And good morning, Westplex. Time again for What About Nutrition, exclusively on Westplex Radio. Welcome to another weekend with some great thoughts for keeping yourself and your family healthy. I'm Steve Casper, and with me is my host, David Gall of O'Fallon Nutrition, and they're located in their new location, Highway K, Mexico Road. We'll get to that in just a minute, but remember, the FDA has not evaluated the statements made in this nutrition program. Always consult your physician before making any changes to your diet or supplements. This program is not intended to treat, diagnose, or cure any disease. So welcome to What About Nutrition, and good morning, David. How you doing?
Wow, Steve, it's another really awesome day here in the western Westplex of St. Louis metro area here. I'm really enjoying the spring weather. How about yourself?
Absolutely, and looking forward to today's show. We've had a stream of really good guests on the show recently.
Yeah, that's right. We're kind of on a roll. And today, Steve, we've got Sarah Pope. She's a chapter leader for the Weston A. Price Foundation. And Steve, you and I here and there have talked about the Weston Price Foundation. This is something that I think is really cool. There was a dentist named Weston A. Price, and the very short version of the story, and Sarah can probably correct me, is Weston was a dentist. He traveled the world in the basically the early part of the 1900s, and he documented changes in dental health and bone structure amongst basically native peoples. And what he would document were the changes as they went from their traditional diets and started adopting a more westernized, more highly processed diet that also included higher levels of sugar and things like that we talk about on What About Nutrition. And the Weston A. Price Foundation exists to this day. Really interesting. And Sarah, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here, David.
Now, did I state that correctly? Is that what you are, a chapter leader in Tampa, Florida there?
Yes, I've been the chapter leader for the Tampa-St. Petersburg area since 2002.
Oh, cool. And the reason, of course, you're on the show today is you're going to be a speaker at the upcoming Wise Traditions Regional Conference here in St. Louis. Tell us a little bit about that conference.
Well, it's the Weston Price Foundation is very excited because in previous years we've done one big annual conference, and we move it around the country. But that conference has gotten so large that the foundation decided to, just this year, start doing some smaller regional conferences. And St. Louis is the very first one, and I'm very excited to be participating in that. The lineup of speakers is fantastic. The Weston Price Foundation President, Sally Fallon Morell, will be speaking.
Wow.
If you haven't seen her presentation on traditional diets, it is can't miss. It's fantastic. It's the talk that really changed my life back in 2002 when I was first getting into traditional diets and trying to figure out how in the world was I going to raise my children healthy with all the processed foods that are just everywhere nowadays. And we've also got Kayla Daniel, who is going to be speaking. She is the author of the book The Whole Soy Story. And if you think soy is a health food, boy, Kayla will rock your world about that, let me tell you.
Yeah.
And we've also got David Wetzel from Green Pasture Products. He is in Nebraska, and he is the only person in the world right now making the cod liver oil and the butter oil exactly as described by Dr. Price in his book, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. He's the dentist you spoke about a minute ago. So the lineup of speakers is first rate, and of course, the Weston Price Foundation and their conferences are known for the food. The food is amazing. They're known worldwide for the best conference food, and it is all prepared traditionally and sourced locally. And if you like to eat, you want to be at that conference the 19th and the 20th of May.
Well, definitely. And if folks wanted to see more about the location of the conference and signing up possibly to go, is there a website they would go to or a phone number they would call?
Yes, what you want to do, and also I just want to say quickly, if you can't make it for the whole weekend and you can only come either Saturday, the 19th of May, or Sunday, May 20th, that's fine. Partial registrations are accepted. So don't say, I can't go just because maybe your child has a soccer game on Saturday morning.
Okay.
Come Saturday afternoon, come Sunday. Partial registrations are welcome. And it's going to be, the sign-up form is on the Weston Price website. If you go to Weston A. Price, that's one word, WESTON APRICE.org, and you'll see on the home page there where it says First Regional Conference. Click on that, and that'll take you to the registration information as well as the speaker lineup and the conference schedule.
Fascinating. Perfect. Well, we'll repeat that again later on in the show, and that's WestonAPriceFoundation.org.
No, just WestonAPrice.org.
Oh, thanks. I'm sorry about that. WestonAPrice.org, and they just need to look for the tab to click on for the regional conference here in St. Louis.
And while people are there checking out the Weston Price website, I would encourage any of your listeners, if they're to consider being a member of the foundation, just because the foundation, all of its monies for the research and the articles and all the information they get out, it's all member supported. There is no money, not a dime, that is taken from industry. So membership is very, very important to the foundation. So
good to
like
know.
what you see when you go to the Weston A. Price website, please become a member.
Sounds like a good idea for a lot of folks. Now, let's give everybody kind of a taste of some of what will be going on at this conference. So you're going to be one of the speakers there. What topics are you going to be covering, Sarah?
Dave, I'm going to be talking on Saturday about bone broth, and this is something that people are starting to reawaken to, the power and the healing nature of homemade bone broths, like all traditional societies prepared.
Sure.
And, we've gotten away from that since World War II. People are used to just buying prepared stocks and Tetra Paks and canned soups and bouillon cubes, and they just mix in their vegetables and make soup, and they think that's a homemade soup. Well, that's not homemade soup.
Right.
And the bone broths and the soups that you buy from the store really are not very health promoting. Even if they're organic, they're usually just water and some flavorings and some vegetables in there, but the healing properties of actually making bone broth, that is simmering bones in water with a little bit of vinegar for, anywhere from 4 to 50 hours, depending on the type of bone you're using. And the amount of healing properties in that type of bone broth is just, it's black and white. The stuff you get from the store is just basically nutritionless. But when you make bone broth yourself in the traditional manner, it is a wonderful food. It's nothing short of a miraculous food. And people, everyone, if I could tell people just one or two things to change in their home, making bone broth would be one of them.
Really?
Wow. It's critical. It's critical to health, yes.
So you're going to be discussing the benefits of that, I would imagine, how to make it, and then you're also going to be speaking about foods to promote fertility.
Well, actually, that's going to be Kayla Daniels. She's going to be speaking about foods to promote fertility. And my talk on Sunday is going to be about nutrient-dense feeding for babies.
Oh, that's right. Well, that's another fascinating topic. Well, maybe we should take a couple of minutes and talk a little bit more about the bone broth, and then after we come back in part 2, I'd like to really dive deeper into the nutritionally, feeding babies better, which I think is a major issue a lot of our listeners can benefit from. So with a bone broth, and you were describing some of the basic benefits, a lot of folks have an idea that making something like a bone broth, it sounds really intimidating and difficult to do, but from what I understand and when I've done it myself, it's really not as hard as you would think. Can you comment on that?
It really isn't, exactly. It sounds intimidating just because, the American consumer has gotten away from a relationship with a local butcher. My grandfather was a butcher, and he had a relationship with his customers, and when the customers would come to his butcher shop, and buy various cuts of meat that they needed, they also would get some bones, and he would have tons of leftover bones, and they would, the customers were able to get these for next to nothing to make their bone broths at home. But since World War II, the American consumer has gradually lost that relationship with that local butcher. You know, you go to the grocery store now and ask for bones, and they'll look at you like you're speaking Greek. They have no idea what you're talking about, because all the meat is delivered already pre-cut and pre-packaged in many cases, and the butcher that you see behind the counter at the grocery store in the supermarket, he's really just a grocery worker. He's arranging all of these cuts of meat in the cooler on display for you to choose from, but he's never cut up a steer. He's never, cut up a chicken. He is not really the traditional butcher as I think of as what my grandfather did.
He's
and
basically,
because of that, people losing touch with the butcher, they don't really know what to do with bones anymore.
yeah, he's basically a slicer, which anybody could do.
Yes, exactly.
He's a slicer.
Kind of like the deli slicer.
He's a slicer.
So maybe that brings up, you mentioned the local butcher. And, Steve, we have the good fortune in this area to have at least a few local meat markets scattered around. And places that I can think of like C. Rallo's or maybe Menino's where they actually do cut their own meat. As opposed to the local grocery stores. So perhaps it's another good reason for folks to develop relationships with people like that, or even better yet, the local farmers that are doing the grass-fed meat, things like that.
That's correct, and people will be delighted to find that once you incorporate homemade bone broth in your diet, and they're really simple, very simple to make. On my blog, my blog is the Healthy Home Economist. I have 5 or 6 different videos of how to prepare bone broth of different types.
Oh, that's important. So that's the healthyhomeeconomist.com.
That's right, and I've got fish stock, duck stock, beef stock, chicken stock, turkey stock, you name it, I've got it out there. So, and they're all short little videos, and they're easy to watch, and you can, fire up your tablet computer on your kitchen counter and follow along with me making your batch of bone broth.
Oh, that's a great idea.
And it's very, very simple to do, and people will be delighted to know how cheap it is to make a huge pot of soup with this amazingly nourishing, mineral-rich broth. And when you eat a lot of bone broth in the diet, here's the bonus, Dave.
Yeah.
You can get by with a lot less meat in your diet and stay healthy.
Well, that makes sense because you're getting the nutrients from the bones and the broth. You're getting, the connective tissue, the collagen is melting down, all of that great bone marrow in there, of course, the minerals.
That's right. Bone broth is a protein sparer, and that's another reason traditional societies valued it so highly is during times of famine or food scarcity. They could get by with just a few morsels of meat and still maintain vibrant health with lots of bone broth in the diet.
Wow, what a great point to wrap up our first segment with. So fascinating. We're talking with Sarah Pope, healthyhomeeconomist.com. And when we come back in part 2, we'll talk about great ways to nutritionally support babies. We're going to talk about the Weston A. Price infant formula and all sorts of other good stuff on What About Nutrition.
And we will be right back.